I was sipping cold brew in a lawn chair when the fake SWAT team stormed my driveway. Not real cops, khakis, clipboards, one guy had a paintball mask on backwards, but they moved like they were about to breach a meth lab instead of confronting a retired forklift driver with a barbecue smoker and a non-regulation mailbox. And me? I just sat there, calm, watching, thinking, is this what HOA enforcement looks like now? Did I miss a newsletter where suburban cosplay became legal grounds for trespassing? Why does one of them have a laminated badge that says, Sergeant of Compliance in Comic Sans? Then one of them shouted, "Drop the tongs, sir," like I was wielding a live grenade instead of barbecue tools. Boom! The brisket hit the dirt. That was the last straw. Now, you're probably wondering how it got this far, why 6 dudes in tactical vests are pointing garden tools at me like I'm the final boss of cul-de-sac warfare. Let's rewind a little. It started, as most wars do, with a mailbox and a woman named Karen. Before we dive into this HOA horror show, hit that subscribe button like you're slapping a violation notice on Karen's front door. Smash like if you've ever been fined for unauthorized lawn joy, and drop a comment if your neighbor's clipboard deserves to be legally declared a weapon. Now, let's rewind to the exact moment everything went gloriously off the rails. You ever just want to drink your coffee in silence and watch the world not fall apart for 5 minutes? Yeah, same. But peace is a luxury, and I apparently live in a war zone where the enemy wears pastel sweaters and carries laminated bylaws like they're scrolls from Mount Olympus. Her name? Of course it's Karen. I moved into Maple Hollow Estates a month ago. Not because I wanted to, because the house was a steal and I was too tired from 2 years of corporate burnout to question why the price was suspiciously low. That was mistake number 1. The second? Assuming the welcome committee was actually welcoming. They showed up on day 2. 3 women, same haircut, same smile, same weird obsession with matching name tags. Maple Hollow HOA. Preserving harmony since 2004. Harmony apparently meant measuring your lawn with a ruler and having synchronized bird baths. Karen was their queen. She smiled like she had just won custody of my soul. "We're so glad to have you," she chirped, handing me a 42-page HOA binder, color-coded and laminated. "You'll want to familiarize yourself with Section 5, mailboxes and other curbside fixtures." "Mailboxes," I repeated. "Oh yes," she said, already pointing at mine. "Yours is non-compliant. Now listen, I'm not a violent person. I once cried when I stepped on a snail. But something about her tone, the way she said non-compliant like I had committed a hate crime against the aesthetic of suburban bliss, made my eye twitch. "I've lived here for 48 hours, I said. "And the mailbox came with the house." "Well," she said and smiled wider. "The previous owner was fined monthly. We assumed you'd want to avoid that." Ah, there it was. The quiet threat, disguised in saccharine cheer. I flipped open the binder. Page 14. All mailboxes must be HOA approved, black in color, 4 inches from the curb, and contain no decorative elements beyond those outlined in the official design addendum. Mine had a sticker of a raccoon on it. I thought it was funny. Karen did not. That night, I drank whiskey instead of coffee and Googled HOA rights versus personal property. Then I duct-taped a note to my mailbox. Raccoons are federally protected. So is my sense of humor. The owner. The next morning, my mailbox was gone. Not vandalized. Gone. Ripped clean from the post still intact, like it had been surgically extracted by a team of suburban ninjas. I walked outside in pajama pants and Crocs, holding my half-empty coffee cup like a holy relic, staring at the empty slot where my dignity used to live. Across the street, Karen was watering her azaleas. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. War had been declared. And so, with caffeine in my veins and spite in my heart, I swore one thing. If Karen wanted to play mailbox Monopoly, I was about to flip the damn board. Here's something no one tells you when you buy a house. You're not just purchasing a structure and a patch of land. You're also buying a front row seat to the passive-aggressive Hunger Games, especially if your neighborhood is ruled by someone named Karen. That morning, I stood at the curb, coffee in hand, looking at the mailbox-shaped void in my soul. The base was still there. Just the box part, the top, surgically vanished like it had been abducted by aliens who specialize in curbside compliance. No note.
No explanación.
But I knew. I knew because Karen was across the street again. This time in yoga pants, sipping a green juice that looked like blended envy, and holding her ever-present clipboard. I'm convinced she has more clipboards than actual opinions. I waved. She didn't wave back.
Va.
I didn't go inside. I didn't call anyone. I drove straight to the local hardware store. Bought a new mailbox. But not just any mailbox. Oh no. This one was industrial grade. Oversized. Painted bright red. I added a metal raccoon cutout to the side and an LED strip that glowed green at night like a radioactive glow stick. Then I installed it. Slightly crooked. Deliberately crooked. I stood back and admired it like it was my child's first art project. Beautiful. Defiant. Probably illegal. By noon, Karen was on my lawn again. "Mr. Thompson," she said, not even bothering to fake a smile. "That mailbox is not in compliance with the community aesthetic standards." I sipped my coffee. "Funny. It matches my personality. Red is not an approved color," she said, tapping her clipboard like it was the Constitution. "You were provided the approved color palette. Beige, charcoal, and forest green. You also said no decorative elements," I said, pointing at the raccoon. "That's not decoration. That's a warning." Karen blinked. "A warning?" "Yep." I took a step closer. "To future tyrants." Her nostrils flared. I swear I saw a vein twitch near her temple. "This isn't funny, Mr. Thompson." I leaned in. "Oh, Karen. It's hilarious." That night, a violation notice appeared on my porch. Laminated. Zip-tied to my doorknob like a reverse Christmas ornament. Violation. Unapproved mailbox color.
Violation, offensive décorative wildlife figure.
Violation. Sarcastic tone during official HOA interaction. I didn't know sarcasm could be a finable offense. I laughed for 5 minutes straight. Then I stapled the notice to a lawn sign and stuck it next to the raccoon mailbox. Added a motion sensor that played raccoon sounds when anyone walked by. I'm not proud. Actually, that's a lie. I was extremely proud. But Karen was plotting. I could feel it. The next day, I came home to a committee of people in beige shirts standing on my lawn, whispering and pointing at my garage. One of them had a tape measure. Another had a drone. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a mailbox anymore. This was a full-blown turf war. And Karen wasn't just playing clipboard cop anymore. She was building an army. You know that moment in every war movie where the general unrolls a giant map, dramatically draws a red line, and says something like, "This is where we make our stand?" Yeah, for me, that moment happened on a Tuesday afternoon while I was pressure washing my driveway and watching Karen take photos of my gutters from the sidewalk. Now, mind you, I wasn't even doing anything non-compliant. I was literally cleaning. But somehow, according to Karen's logic, I was releasing excessive particulate into the air, which I guess is HOA code for she needed something to complain about before her 4:30 wine spritzer. Let's rewind a little. The day after the raccoon mailbox drama, I started receiving fines. Not just one, a stack. Neatly zip-tied to my front door like I was on some kind of subscription plan for harassment. Violation. Improper mailbox design. Violation. Visual obstruction from decorative lawn signage. Violation. Non-standard hose storage. That last one hit me different. You know how you coil up a hose on a wall hook? Apparently, mine was looped too casually. Not even kidding. I laughed. Then I bought 5 more hoses and looped them all differently. Karen didn't laugh. She filed for a formal HOA inspection. So, I did what any rational, overcaffeinated man being hunted by a clipboard mafia would do. I cleaned everything. And I mean everything. Driveway, spotless. Gutters, immaculate. Lawn edges, laser sharp. Mailbox raccoon, given a full touch-up with metallic spray paint and 2 googly eyes. It was glorious. That afternoon, a beige Toyota Corolla rolled up. Out stepped Greg. Greg was the HOA's compliance officer, which is a fancy way of saying he's Karen's enforcer with a tape measure and an inflated sense of purpose. He had aviator sunglasses, orthopedic shoes, and a clipboard that looked like it had been through multiple wars. He introduced himself by clearing his throat and saying, "I'll be conducting a Level 3 visual inspection." I raised an eyebrow. "You got a warrant for that, Greg?" He blinked. No, sir. This is an HOA procedure." "Cool," I said. "Then you can stand right there on the public sidewalk and use your eyes like everyone else." Greg did not like that. He paced. He peered. He took photos of my trash bins, like they were about to confess to a crime. Then, and I'm not making this up, he measured the angle of my satellite dish. Karen watched all of this from across the street, sipping from a wine glass the size of a soup bowl and wearing a visor that said, "Harmony Matters." I was pressure washing the driveway again. Not because it needed it, but because Karen hated the noise. "Sir," Greg finally called out, "we've documented several ongoing infractions, including unauthorized seasonal lighting, improper downspout placement, and auditory disturbance." "You mean the pressure washer?" "Yes. It's electric. It's quite loud." I turned it off, walked over, looked Greg square in the eyes. "Do you know what else is loud, Greg?" He hesitated. "Freedom, Greg. Freedom is loud." Greg blinked like I had spoken in Morse code. He walked back to his car and muttered something into a radio. I'm 90% sure it was just Karen on the other end pretending to be dispatch. The next morning, the HOA installed a sign directly across from my property. Big, beige, ugly as sin. "Notice: this property is under active review. Compliance pending." Karen stood next to it and smiled like she'd just pulled Excalibur from the HOA handbook. I waved. She didn't. That was the moment I decided I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to become her worst nightmare. A well-informed, legally savvy, and petty-as-hell homeowner with nothing left to lose but time and printer ink. Some men go to war with swords, others with words. Me? I went with brisket. Because if there's one thing an HOA fears more than a non-compliant trash can, it's unity. Especially if that unity smells like smoked meat and freedom. Let me paint the picture. After Greg's Level 3 visual inspection and Karen's threatening lawn sign, the neighborhood started talking, whispering really cautious voices in cul-de-sacs, passing glances at the raccoon mailbox that now had LED underglow and its own tiny American flag. People who used to nod politely at Karen's clipboard now crossed the street to avoid her. Turns out I wasn't the only one drowning in citations. Janet, 2 houses down, got fined for unsanctioned lawn art. A garden gnome wearing sunglasses. Brian, hit with a violation for improper ambient lighting because his solar path lights were the wrong shade of white. And Greg, HOA's own compliance guy? Yeah. He got cited for parking his Corolla 1 inch over the sidewalk line. Nobody was safe, so I called a meeting. Not in secret, not in a whisper. I printed flyers in Comic Sans and taped them to every community mailbox. Grill and gather, this Saturday, my driveway. Come angry, come curious. BYOC, bring your own chair. Karen tried to tear them down, so I posted more, bigger, in color, with a cartoon raccoon holding a spatula. That Saturday, the whole street showed up. Brian brought ribs. Janet brought deviled eggs. Even Greg came, though he stood awkwardly near the azaleas, sipping a Capri Sun and pretending not to exist. I fired up the smoker at noon and let the scent of mesquite and defiance float through Maple Hollow like a beacon. Karen stood on her porch the entire time, arms crossed, lips so tight they looked vacuum-sealed. Then, the moment of truth. I rolled out a folding table covered in documents, property maps, deed history, local zoning laws, and, most importantly, the HOA charter, the original one from 2004. I'd gotten it through a public records request and a little light bribery with cookies. See, Karen liked to pretend the HOA had full dominion over the neighborhood. But what she never expected, someone reading the fine print. I cleared my throat and tapped the charter. Section 1A Boundaries. HOA jurisdiction is limited to properties outlined in Attachment B. I held up Attachment B. Maple Hollow was shaped like a crooked donut. Karen's control? Everything inside the circle. My house? Squarely outside it, like a glorious little island of autonomy. Pointed at it. Which means everything she's done, the fines, the threats, the clipboard theatrics, none of it applies to me. Or to anyone else whose property lies along the southern stretch. Murmurs. Gasps. One guy dropped a sausage in shock. I looked around. You've been bullied. Nickel and dimed. Threatened with nonsense. And I'm not saying we riot. Brian raised his ribs like a weapon. But maybe, I continued, it's time we pushed back. Karen had had enough. She marched down the street like a suburban general and screeched, "This is an unauthorized gathering." Someone handed her a burger. "This is a clear violation of HOA policy." Someone offered her a lemonade. This is an ambush," she shrieked. And then came the line, the one that cemented the day in neighborhood legend. I took a bite of brisket, wiped my hands, looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Karen, sweetheart, you came to a barbecue with a clipboard. That's not an ambush. That's bad planning." The crowd lost it. Janet full-on snorted deviled eggs. Greg dropped his Capri Sun and slow-clapped like he'd just been freed from a cult. Karen turned redder than her violation stamps, spun on her heel, and stormed back to her porch. But something had changed. She wasn't feared anymore. She was just background noise. By the end of the night, we'd eaten everything, made 3 new group chats, and agreed to start reviewing the HOA board members' terms, legally. Because this war wasn't just mine anymore. It was a rebellion, and I had a damn fine grill. I didn't sleep the night before the final meeting. Not because I was nervous, because I was excited. See, you know that feeling when you're a kid and it's Christmas Eve, and you just know tomorrow's going to be legendary? That was me. Adult edition. Sitting on my porch with a thermos full of coffee and a folder full of revenge paperwork. The Great Barbecue Rebellion had sparked something. Suddenly, neighbors who'd never spoken were swapping legal advice over smoked sausages. People were digging through zoning maps like they were searching for buried treasure. Even Greg, formerly Greg the Enforcer, was now Greg the Whistleblower, texting me photos of Karen's private violation logs. Turns out, Karen had been keeping a secret list. A bonus round of fines she'd been unofficially issuing to people she didn't trust, which included, but was not limited to, dog breeds she didn't like, too many lawn gnomes, and one guy who smelled too aggressively of basil. And the kicker? She'd been forging signatures on HOA motions. That's when it stopped being funny. That's when it got legal. So we did what any good suburban resistance would do. We filed a formal complaint. And then we requested an emergency HOA board meeting. And then we called the city. You ever seen someone's face when they walk into a room expecting applause and instead find a city zoning officer, a notary, and 2 neighbors holding giant printouts of forged emails? Karen did. She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, the same one she'd once banned children from for disruptive giggling. I sat in the front row, raccoon mailbox logo proudly displayed on my t-shirt, sipping from a coffee mug that said, "Compliant this." The zoning official spoke first. After reviewing documents provided by Mr. Thompson and other residents, it appears several violations of legal process and HOA governance occurred. He turned to Karen. Specifically, forging community signatures, issuing unauthorized fines, and tampering with property not under HOA jurisdiction. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again, managing only, "This is a misunderstanding, ma'am," the notary said dryly. "We have your name signed on an email chain dated 6 months before you were even elected to the board." I coughed politely. "She's just very proactive." There were chuckles, quiet ones, nervous ones, but they were there. People weren't afraid anymore. Janet stood up and dropped a binder on the table. "Here are my fines, none of which have legal backing. I want them expunged." Brian raised his hand. "I move to remove Karen Whitaker from the HOA board under Section 9B, Misuse of Power and Community Resources." Seconded. Voted. Passed. Karen blinked like someone had unplugged her. Greg, bless his reforming soul, wheeled in a cart with a new mailbox design guide, this one featuring actual resident input, and held it up like Simba in The Lion King. The raccoon was on the cover. Karen stood, clipboard clutched in white-knuckled hands. "You can't do this." The zoning officer looked bored. "They just did." That was the last time we saw Karen at a board meeting. She put her house up for sale 2 weeks later. I bought her clipboard at the community garage sale. $3. Turned it into a bird feeder. Now, every morning, I drink my coffee next to a bright red, glow-in-the-dark raccoon mailbox with a garden gnome flipping the bird perched beneath it. And when the bird's peck seed off that plastic clipboard, I smile. Because some people plant trees for the next generation. Me, I planted a petty little revolution, and it bloomed in glorious, non-compliant color. And that's how a raccoon mailbox, a barbecue tong, and 6 wannabe commandos turned one quiet neighborhood into a suburban battlefield. If you enjoyed watching petty tyranny get publicly grilled, tap like, drop a comment with your wildest HOA moment, and subscribe for more truish tales of laminated chaos. Click right here, right arrow, you won't believe what they zip-tied this time.